It is 430 BC. Behind gleaming marble and unbroken stone walls, Athens stands at the height of its power. Not the largest land, not the mightiest army, yet its voice shapes the seas and the lives of countless rivals. On a rocky hill, crowned with the Parthenon's gold and ivory, faith and ambition radiate outward, and in crowded markets below, democracy and empire fuse, fueling ships and ideas that will ripple for centuries. What secret transforms this single city into the heartbeat of the Greek world? Step inside Athens at its zenith and discover how an unlikely polis carved its legend, one stone, one debate, one festival at a time. High above the restless city, the Acropolis rises, a crown of pale stone against the Attic sky. At its heart stands the Parthenon, new and unblemished, its columns marching in perfect rhythm, each drum carved from the quarries of Pentelicus and set by hundreds of skilled hands. The marble glows gold in the morning sun, a beacon for sailors returning to Piraeus, and a promise to all who dwell below. Inside, the air is cool and hushed. Here, Phidias has conjured a vision of Athena unlike any before, towering 12 meters tall. The goddess gleams with hammered gold and polished ivory. Her armor and shield shimmer with scenes of gods and giants, her outstretched hand holding a winged Nike, a silent messenger of victory. Every detail, each curl of hair, each fold of drapery, reveals the mastery of Phidias and his workshop. The gold alone weighs over a ton, carefully fitted so it can be removed, counted, and replaced, a treasury as much as a tribute. The ivory flesh glows softly in the filtered light, almost alive. Through the great eastern doors, shafts of sunlight catch on Athena's spear and helmet, casting long shadows across the cellar floor. Pilgrims and citizens alike stand in awe, reminded of the city's devotion and its reach. Here, faith and ambition are fused in stone and metal. The Parthenon proclaims not just piety, but power, the confidence of a people who remember their triumph over Persia, and now look outward, certain that their goddess and their city are unmatched in the Greek world. Below the gleaming heights of the Acropolis, the Agora hums with life. The air is thick with the calls of merchants, the clatter of bronze, the scent of olives and new bread. Stalls line the open square, shaded by awnings, crowded with baskets of figs, amphorae of oil, bolts of wool dyed crimson or sea blue. Potters shape clay at their wheels, metalworkers hammer out shields and spearheads, and scribes tally accounts on wax tablets. Here, the city's pulse is felt most keenly, not in marble temples, but in the daily exchange of goods, news, and ideas. Farmers from Attica arrive at dawn, leading donkeys laden with garlic and onions. Fishermen haul in their catch from Phaleron, their nets still damp with salt water. In one corner, a craftsman displays oar blades and pitch for sealing hulls, reminders that Athens' power rides on the sea. Workshops behind the stalls turn out everything from sandals to bronze armor, supplying not just citizens but the trireme crews who defend the city's reach. The Agora is the engine room of empire, its commerce fueling the ships that patrol the Aegean and the public works rising on the Acropolis. But the Agora is more than a marketplace. Lawyers argue cases under the colonnades, philosophers debate virtue beside the fishmongers. Politicians, wrapped in dusty himatians, gather supporters with a whispered word or a public speech. Every voice matters here, citizen and foreigner, craftsman and general. The city's strength is not only measured in stone or silver, but in the ceaseless energy of its people, trading, disputing, persuading. From this crowded square, the business of empire flows outward, shaping decisions that will soon echo on the Pnyx, where the assembly waits to decide Athens' fate. On the bare rock of the Pnyx, thousands gather under the open sky. Here, the people of Athens govern themselves. There are no kings, no priests to decide in secret. Instead, every citizen, at least 6,000 today, stands shoulder to shoulder, waiting for the herald's call. Public slaves, trailing a rope stained with red ochre, sweep the stragglers up from the Agora, herding them toward the assembly. The city demands a quorum before any vote can begin. The order is strict but simple. The oldest may speak first, though any man over 20 can rise, climb the bema, and address the crowd. Some voices tremble, others ring out clear. Proposals are debated, challenged, amended. The risk is real. Offer an illegal motion, and you may face trial yourself. But the promise is greater. Each man is equal before the law, whatever his wealth, his birth, his standing. Today, Pericles stands to speak. His helmet set aside, his gaze steady, he reminds the assembly, our constitution does not copy the laws of neighboring states. We are rather a pattern to others than imitators ourselves. Gestures rippled through the crowd, hands raised to vote, a sea of arms deciding war or peace, taxes or tribute, the fate of allies and citizens alike. Here, the city's future is shaped not by decree, but by the will of the many, spoken aloud and counted in the sunlight. Stone runs like a lifeline from city to sea. The long walls, built of limestone and brick, stretch 6 kilometers to the port of Piraeus, enclosing a narrow corridor just wide enough for wagons and soldiers to pass. 3 walls now stand, the northern, the southern, and the middle wall, finished under Pericles after the loss of Attic farmland. Each wall rises nearly 4 meters high, topped with walkways for guards. Every few hundred paces, a tower interrupts the line, offering archers a vantage point and signaling stations for emergencies. Gates at either end control the flow of goods and people, keeping the city's heart beating even as enemies prowl the fields outside. When Sparta's armies march into Attica, burning crops and emptying villages, the long walls hold firm. Refugees stream through the corridor, pressed tight between stone, carrying what they can. Grain ships dock at Piraeus, unloaded by teams of porters who hurry supplies up the walled road to the city's crowded gates. No other Greek city commands such a passage. The walls are more than defense. They are strategy made visible, a promise that Athens will not be starved into surrender. Behind these fortifications, the city becomes an island on land, joined to its lifeblood, the harbors, and the restless sea beyond. At the end of the long walls, the city opens onto the restless blue of Piraeus, a port like no other in the Greek world. 3 great harbors curve into the shoreline, Cantharos for merchantmen, Zea and Munichia for the war fleet. Stone quays bristle with masts, rigging creaks in the wind, and the shouts of traders blend with the slap of water against hulls. Over 200 triremes line the docks, their bronze rams burnished and ready, each one crewed by skilled rowers drawn from every corner of Attica. These are the ships that carried Athens to victory at Salamis, that now patrol the Aegean and keep the grain ships moving in. even as Sparta's armies press at the city's back. But Piraeus is more than a naval base. It is the empire's engine room. Every year, silver tribute pours in from allied cities, heavy sacks of coin, tallied and recorded by the Hellenotamiai, the treasurers of the Greeks. Stone quota lists stand in the sunlight, carved with the names of distant islands and the sums they owe. 1/60th of all tribute is set aside for Athena, a sacred portion, but the rest fuels the city's ambitions. Athenian owls, tetradrachms stamped with the goddess's face, change hands in every port from Egypt to Thrace, the hard currency of empire. Here, money and muscle are fused, each coin a plank for a new trireme, each ship a promise that Athens' power rides on the sea. In the shadow of the ship sheds, sailors and merchants, officials and foreigners all move to the pulse of commerce and command. The city's fate is written not just in marble or law, but in the salt air of Piraeus, where silver and ships make an island nation strong. On the southern slope of the Acropolis, a great crowd gathers before sunrise. The theatre of Dionysus, carved into the rock, fills with citizens, men, boys, elders, even visiting foreigners, elbow to elbow, on wooden benches. The annual city Dionysia has begun. Here, drama is not just entertainment, but a public ritual, a mirror held up to the city itself. Tragedies and comedies unfold in fierce competition, each funded by a wealthy chourigos who vies for honor in the eyes of peers and rivals. The chorus, sometimes 50 voices strong, fills the open air with song and movement, their lines echoing the hopes, fears, and debates of Athens. Playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides test the city's conscience, weaving stories of gods and mortals, justice and pride. For days, the city pauses. Shops close, courts adjourn, and all attention turns to the stage. In this space, Athens sees itself reflected, proud, divided, questioning, united by festival and by the shared language of drama. But now, the city strains under pressure. The first Spartan raids sweep through Attica, burning fields and scattering families, while the long walls funnel thousands of refugees behind stone. Crowding thickens, homes overflow, and the air grows close. Then the plague arrives, silent, merciless, spreading faster than rumor. Bodies fill the streets, hope falters, and even the strongest fall. The enemy waits beyond the ruined farms, but inside the walls, fear and sickness threaten to do what no army ever could. Amid the ruins, only fragments endure. Athens rises, dazzling and precarious, its democracy shaping laws in sunlight, its triremes ruling restless seas. Ambition breeds tension, even golden ages cast long shadows. Today, every city wrestles with power and fragility. What would your city's peak look like? Share your home and next journey below.